But we'll go ahead and get started. I know we might have some people jumping in, coming from other meetings and everything like that. Just as a reminder, if you could add your chapter to your name, I know that's helpful for the conversation. So I'll just jump into it. I know, Jeff, you've got somewhere to be, but you have a question for the group if you want to go ahead and unmute and throw that out to everyone.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if my name has my tag, but I'm Virginia. I'm from Virginia, Southeast Virginia. No, I just had a question. We had some issue come up with a member kind of being unhappy or just questioning why they didn't get some information about some new legislation that occurred back in July. And it kind of got us thinking about the Legislative Action Committee. And we've been kind of looking into that a lot more. And I wanted to know if anybody else had any, or just describe how you handle the Legislative Action Committee. Do they give you monthly reports? Do they give you quarterly reports? Do you ever have meetings with them? Do they provide you with copies of upcoming legislation and what position they're going to take in the legislature, et cetera? So just the interaction between your board and the Legislative Action Committee, trying to figure out what other people experience.
I can speak
I can,
to,
yeah. Go for it, Chris.
okay. We just had a meeting yesterday at our legal seminar, which was an 8-hour event. And I talked to a couple dozen homeowners and managers, and a few of them asked for more information on what our legislation action committees are doing. And our board each month has the minutes from the legislation action committee, and we review them. But we don't have a process on displaying them on our website. We are redoing our website right now, but that is something that our members and homeowners are interested in. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Jeff, because we're going through the same. We want to provide more to our homeowners, and they are asking to find out what's going on a monthly, quarterly basis. So if anybody has suggestions, I want to learn like you, Jeff.
Thank you.
So I was going to say, I actually sit on the LAC for Oregon and have been on the board, and I'm on one of our chapters boards on the eastern side of the state. We don't send out anything on a monthly or quarterly basis. The LAC is so busy when we're dealing with the legislation. But what I can say is that the Dawn and Phoebe and her team, they do compile for every state an actual summary report for what happened after session. The other thing that our chapter does, and Western Oregon has been really good at this, is that we have a kickoff event every year. And the kickoff event oftentimes will bring up we actually have it be as a legislative update. So within a calendar year, you have an event be a legislative update. And there's another organization called OutCam that also does this as well for Oregon and Washington. And they actually just had a legislative update session in September. And they had an attorney that was on the Washington LAC then come and speak to the various items that affected that state and what that meant for the members. And so that would be what I would suggest to look to do, so that you can then just have an event every year.
Yeah.
And it usually gets pretty good attendance too. I mean, everybody likes law.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. We do have all of that. We do everything like you just said, exact same stuff here. But the question, the issue came up here is prior to the legislature finalizing the code and enacting the codes, how do we as members know what's coming up and what the Legislative Action Committee side they're going to take on the particular thing, so that we know, like if I'm a management company and there's something out there that's going to affect management companies, how do I know what position the LAC's going to take, so that if I disagree or think it's going to affect me in a different way, we can do something before it's enacted? That's the issue we're having, is whose side is LAC on, per se, because our money does go to them. But what if they don't support our side, or what we think is our side, and we didn't know that until too late, after the fact? And that's the issue we're having.
And maybe it's something that you could have, like what we do. Our LAC is not as, we give an update to our board, and that satisfies the board, but it sounds like maybe somebody from the LAC actually needs to present at your board on, our LAC meets every single week. So when we're in session, I mean, we're always meeting. So it sounds like they need to talk to the board, that then the board can talk to the members about, getting position and whatnot.
Right.
Or testimony or whatever.
Right. And I think that's a little bit of what we're trying to figure out is whose quote unquote responsibility or job is it to give us those monthly meeting minutes or whatever about what the LAC's doing. And we're not perfectly sure who that is and who that's going to come from.
Well, so the LAC can give, so you got your CEDs. Our CEDs sit on the call. So I think the CED could give the, at least the minutes. I don't know if that's really going to be as beneficial for creating change. I think that inviting a LAC member to the board meeting and having it on the agenda could be what you need in order to actually get the information and then have some sort of feedback. But the LAC would, the CED could provide what the LAC minutes are to the board. And then I would suggest setting up a time for somebody from the LAC to actually come and present.
Right. That's one of the things we've looked at. So, I appreciate
Jeff,
all the comments. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sorry to cut you off. So I'm new to the group. I'm in Central Virginia, but I'm also on the LAC from Virginia. So
Yeah.
we have our organizational meeting next month. So I'll be happy to broach this subject with the LAC and talk about it. And maybe you and I could talk about this a little bit more offline. I know last year we pushed a lot of stuff through Phoebe and National to get associations motivated on some of the legislation that came through. And I can tell you for the coming year, there's going to be a big push for education of lawmakers because every seat's turning over in the General Assembly this year. So, and a lot of districts have changed. So our big push is going to be educating and building some alliances. So, so it'll be a little bit different effort, I think, this year.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll touch base with you.
Okay. I'm on the board for Central Virginia and on the LAC. So, I got 2 seats at the table on this one. So,
well, so do you then present the minutes to your board because you sit on it? Like, how does your board get the information of what the LAC's doing and what they're supporting?
It was my first session on the LAC, and most of it went through National. So, so it's a good question, and I'll work on getting you that answer.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
So Kelly, I sit on the Florida LAC, and we generally try to present something to our chapter during session. And I can tell you, Michael might chime in. I see him on here, but a lot of the stuff, our lobbyists, I guess for strategic purposes, they don't want that released to the public until something's final, because there's so many moving parts. You read a white paper today and it's subject to change tomorrow. So from a LAC perspective, we got to be very careful how we present that and when we present that, and make sure it's accurate and final information, because it's
right.
all
I think that right. I agree with that. That's the dilemma is, when do we get the information? Are we allowed to give out the information? Should we give out the information? And in my kind of initial reviewing the LAC's charters and things like that, I wasn't clear on those issues. So that's why I brought it up. That's why I'm just trying to see how other people handle that type of question.
Yeah, but I think the key theme, Jeff, that you're hitting on, though, is the homeowner leaders are hungry for this. And so right now, the mechanism that we have, as good as it is, it's limited. We're not getting enough of the information that we can share to the people that really want to hear about it, which are the homeowner leaders. At least that's my contention in the Southeast chapter down here in Broward County.
And Michael, that's a great point that you bring up. I was just with the Heartland chapter. I don't see that they have a representative and specifically they're talking about putting an initiative into place for 2024 about training business partners and managers how to bring information to their homeowners, whether it's at their homeowner meetings or to their boards, and making sure they know the correct way to communicate to them to make sure it's getting to that next step of the boards and the homeowners, but making sure that they have that, again, our attorneys, all of the boards love the attorneys and talk to them and have them at their meetings. How do we make sure they have the correct information to bring that to them as well? So that might be something to think about too, of how to train our business partners and our managers on this content to bring it specifically back to their homeowners and to their boards as well. And I know all the chapters are different with that, so that might be something to think about for the future, whether that's a session or a recording or a news article or something like that.
Okay.
Anyone else have anything around that topic? Jeff, do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, no, that gives me some ideas, and can talk to Tim and, move on. I think that's good.
Perfect. Chris, I know you had a question for the group. Do you want to go ahead and throw that out?
Yes, I was wondering if other chapters offer homeowner training resources in addition to the board leadership certificate and education events that are standard. And the reason I'm asking as incoming president for 2024, my initiative is educate board volunteers, homeowner volunteers. Hopefully that'll make life easier for everybody else. And from my experience talking with about 100 of them in the last 3 months that are all homeowner volunteers, the one thing they want is a video sent to them or a PDF download that says, what do I do as a board member? Because they have 10-year-old documents that they found on the internet, and a lot of them aren't really relevant anymore. So I'm looking for ideas.
Chris, hi, Craig in West Florida. And this year, my kind of theme for this year was educating board members. So I'm right there with you. I started in CAI as a board member, so I knew how little I knew when I started, and we're still dealing with the same thing today. So in Florida, they do have certification programs for board members. Condo side, it's mandatory. On the HOA side, it's not as mandatory, but this year we started a series of programs called Just the Facts, where we're essentially providing an educational resource. It's not continuing yet, obviously, but most of them have been panel discussions related on a specific topic, like financial best practices for associations kind of thing. And those have been pretty well received. We're also starting, I believe we're just trying to get it scheduled today for the last quarter, to do a board, same thing, like a panel discussion of experts, to allow the board to come and just ask questions of the experts that are on the panel, just whatever questions they might have about the different aspects, whether it be, everybody has legal questions, but, accounting, from a manager, from a landscaper, from a, painting guy, and just giving them access to different experts, trying to drive a lot of board members don't understand why they need to be members of CAI. So what we're trying to do is provide a kind of the free one at the beginning, that they, where they love the information they're getting and they want to join to kind of get more of that information from the experts. And then going into next year, we have a whole nother list of programs. The other thing we did this year, which I thought was important, is we previously had an education committee that kind of handled education across the chapter. And we actually split that up into a manager education, homeowner education, and business partner education. So we actually have separate committees that look at those three separate and very distinct kind of topic areas. And then we provide programs for each one of those areas based on what that particular audience needs. So I think that making sure that it was a dedicated group of people that are doing nothing but looking at homeowner education, I think was important to make sure it gets the attention it needs.
Thanks for that, because that's what we're looking at too now.
Yeah.
For specific homeowners, because we're doing it every other month, a free membership, a free education for just homeowners, trying to capture the people that just came into CAI Minnesota.
Right.
So
right, and one of the things that I was always concerned about is, you can get them the first time potentially, but are you going to get the renewals? So are you going to give them enough value over the year to make them realize that it makes sense for them to renew and continue? And I think I don't feel like we were doing a very good job of not only providing the value, but communicating the value. So that's kind of been a focus this year.
thanks.
I just had a question, Chris. Is your chapter primarily homeowner leaders and less CAMs, or are you trying to use this initiative to get more homeowner leaders?
So we were at like 600 members a few years ago. We went up to 1,000 and became, or right around 1,000, very large just this last year. And then a few months ago, we acquired competing organization that had 400 plus members. So I think our membership is it's low. It's very deficient on the homeowners. Business vendors, that's no problem. We've got as many as we want. Managers, we're trying to get more in. There's a lot of flux in the system, but homeowners are deficient at events. Yesterday we had an event with about 200 people and there were 10 homeowners. And I talked to them all, but the ones that just came on board, we have a free membership until next year. And each one that I'm talking to, they're craving information, that they want to click a button, see a video. What do I do as a board member? Click a button, download a PDF that they can look at and go, oh, this is what I do as a board member. And where they're finding it is on vendor sites. They're finding it on old threads. Many of them that they provided were like 10 plus years old. So I'm trying to develop something to have them renew next July and retain, just as Craig was saying. So
thank
Go
you.
ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so Chris, we tried something down here in South Florida this year for the first time. It's my understanding it's the first time. We did a homeowner leader roundtable. We invited just presidents and treasurers to that meeting. We limited to that. We had about 16 associations that were represented in that roundtable discussion. It was pretty good. We focused on just the three major areas of concern that the homeowner leaders are dealing with right now. First and foremost is rising costs. The second piece was a tsunami of legislation coming out of Tallahassee, and then being able to adjust to those changes and do it in a cost-effective, and then also do it in a way that that it works within their community. And the third one that came out of that is the displacement. We're seeing a lot of in certain areas, we're starting to see activity around displacement where homeowners are having to make a decision. Do I stay? Can I afford to stay in my home, or do I got to sell and move on somewhere else? And if so, where do I go? And that's becoming a very stressful thing for those associations that have to deal with, because they're dealing with neighbors that they've established a relationship with. So it's becoming a really difficult environment for those that are starting to experience this. What we found in here, and when we asked about, what do they want to see in getting together, what kinds of objectives they want to achieve, what they're looking for, what we heard back was, we're looking for a safe place where we can get together and we can just talk about the issues that we're dealing with. We love our managers, no problem. We love our business partners, but we don't share the same kinds of things. We need a separate platform where we can just have a conversation, develop contacts that we can start sharing, learn best practices about what others are doing and so forth, that we can learn and borrow from and apply to our own situations. They're really looking for a venue like that, where the language that we're talking about, we're speaking from, speaks directly to them and what they're dealing with and their needs. That was the takeaway that came out of it. And I'll leave you with that. So we're gonna try to see if we can spin more of these up in the future, but it was an eye-opening and a great learning situation.
That's great information, and that's exactly what we're gonna do at our next education event in the month, is have an hour after just to network with other board members. A question, do you have a business vendor directory at your chapter?
No, we're working on that.
Okay, and that was one thing that was developed about a year ago at ours, and they are gobbling that up. That's one of the few things that they want. So thanks for the other info, because that's what we want to do. Thank you.
Sarah, go ahead.
I was just going to throw in the suggestion. The roundtable is something that the Western Oregon has done for about 5 years now, and it is great. So keep up doing it. We have one vendor, one business partner to kind of sponsor it, and then we do have a lot of people that come on a regular basis. So I would agree to do that. The other thing that Western Oregon did to create value for our members was in about 2016, I think it was, we actually went to where all educational events for any amount of board members, you could attend for free. So we made it to where our budget was able to sustain whoever wanted to show up. You get this membership for, $250 or whatever it is now. This is also what you get for that. And so it's this other incentive for them to be able to come to these educational events. Because I do like the idea of creating some documentation and handouts. I'm big on that. But because I think this is longer term, because the information is always changing, that you want to try to get them there and in those seats. And so we actually have a chapter that is very big with CAVLs. And we have a lot of participation with those members as well. And so that's how we did it. We started it again 6, 7 years ago, and it's huge. So that would be our suggestion.
So just so I'm clear, the education events are free for homeowners.
Yeah. So like all our luncheons are free for them, for whoever wants to come. If there was a couple board members that wanted to come, they could come and they sign up. We have on our website, you just sign up as a member, and then you're put in for free, and you can come to any of ours, and we have like 7 or 8 a year. So social events they'll have to pay for, but the educational events, it's free to those homeowners that want to attend.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, on that same subject, to help to increase people coming and attend our events, I know I talked to Myra about this, but I wanted to kick around an idea to help maybe increase people going to our events, is something like in the beginning of the year, giving an opportunity to purchase at a lower price, to purchase all the events for the year. And then that way they've kind of already bought in, was my thought process. So instead of having to buy each event individually, they've already kind of bought in, and then you kind of feel an obligation. Hey, I've already paid for this. I'm going to go ahead and go and attend because I've already put the money out, So I was kind of thinking, I have to talk to the programs committee because they're very territorial, but it was, I don't know if anybody's done anything like that or thought about something like that.
I do know of a couple chapters. I'm not sure if anyone on this call does that, but I do know of a couple chapters that do that similar. You're buying the package, and it might not be for the whole year, depending on how many education sessions they have going on. It might be you get to pick 4 or 6, or you get to do these. But I do know that some chapters have had some success with that piece of it. So, and I'd also just like to throw out as well that if you're looking to have more homeowner leaders coming to your education sessions, again, I'm very big at making sure that they have a voice within this. And so if you haven't done a survey in some time, again, a lot of them are outside of the industry and they're also volunteering for their communities. And so if you're doing a lunch session, they might not be able to leave work, or if you're doing a full day seminar, they might have to take a vacation day. And are they willing to take that personal time that is limited for everyone to participate for another volunteer role that they're already doing. So just to be conscious again about that not everyone who, I know there's that kind of thought that a lot of them are retired and they've got time to do things, but depending on your market, who they are, just kind of keeping that in mind, that a lot of these people don't have the same flexibility to attend during the day, or if it's in the evening, you're taking away from that personal time with family or on the weekends. So definitely make sure you're surveying your members and you're allowing their voice to be heard, outside of just, a manager and a business partner saying, no, the breakfasts work best. But if you're not seeing those homeowners attending, it might be a timing issue. Versus a content issue. So just making sure you keep that in mind as well. Any other notes around this topic? All right, Haley, I know you had a couple questions that you wanted to throw out to the group as well.
Oh, I just wanted to ask what awards they were giving for their chapter, because we have kept it kind of small and we were trying to think of some things to add. So if anybody just wants to throw out what awards they give at the end of the year.
We just got our flyer yesterday for nominations on our 2023 Vision Awards. And we have an extensive list. We're expecting about 500 people at the gala this year. And last year was amazing. And we have to consistently ask for people, but I could get a digital copy and probably just email it to you or through Kelly, because that's a big part of our annual celebration is the awards.
Awesome. In fact, I think you may have shared that with Summer. Did you share it with Summer, our executive director? I don't know, maybe she was looking on your website. I had asked her the same question, and I think she showed me your chapter as an example, because you had some really creative ones, and it was nice to see how they were layered across the different, membership types.
Right. And that's one of the important things, is trying to acknowledge everybody. The support staff is a new one this year. And that was added for both business partners and management companies as a category for us, in addition to the normal ones. But it's probably available on our website, knowing our CED. So if not, I can send it to Kelly and she can send it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll put my email in the message.
Haley, I can do the same. We actually just went over our awards yesterday to determine who is getting them, and we have new awards this year. I believe they're also on our website, but hopefully that'll be helpful as you pick some. We've got all over the place, like Public Advocates, Rising Star, President's Award. We have new ones like Writer of the Year, Presenter of the Year. So there's some good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you, Ruth.
Yep.
Anyone else want to share anything around the awards that you provide at your chapter level? Go ahead, Charlotte.
I'm actually just curious, because we're talking about awards right now as well. And we do a voting system. So we allow anyone and everyone to nominate someone or themselves. And then we take all those nominations. We make sure that those nominations, they are in fact legitimate nominations. They're members, they really have done what they've said they've done. And then we put it out to a vote to our entire membership. And our committees talked about this because I do worry that every year it feels a little bit like a popularity contest. And I'm just curious how everyone else decides those. Do you have a committee that sits down and decides? Do you open it up to an entire membership vote? I'd love to hear the different styles.
Go ahead, Chris.
I can tell you what Minnesota does is we redact. You're talking about the nominations and then the voting for categories. So some categories will have 5, some will have 25. We go through, have the CED and another person redact everything. And then we have independent volunteers that take a certain amount of categories. And we go through it that way and do voting. So it's all anonymous, all, so.
It's a committee though that does that. So you redact the names. So whoever is looking at these nominations has no idea the name, just what they've done.
Correct.
And then it's decided on in those groups or by those individuals.
All independently, not in a group. You do not interact with anybody else.
Okay.
It's sent to you confidential from the CED. So, I mean, the CED and the other person, they know, so, but then you're voting on it independently, not knowing who it is. Sometimes, and they do that specific to not hit the same companies that are being voted upon or nominating. But that's what we've done for 7 years.
Awesome. Thank you.
We have an executive committee of our board of directors, and the executive committee ultimately is the one that decides who gets what award. But input is asked for from the committees, for example, for committee chair of the year, committee member of the year, that's all taken into consideration. There are also certain awards that are 100% point-based, so there's no discretion, such as the Rising Star Award. So you get points for attending meetings, taking minutes, writing articles, and that point total is calculated at the end of the year. And if you haven't gotten the Rising Star Award yet, and you've got a high point total, that would, allow you to get that award. Same thing for Presenter of the Year points, Writer of the Year points. So it's done in various ways. There are also the executive committee, we've got like distinguished service, special recognition, outstanding contribution, and those are a little bit more discretionary. For example, we had a task force that modified our policies and procedures and worked really hard on that. So last year we gave them the outstanding contribution award. So various different ways.
Well, and I'll say our chapter does it with the board. The board receives and reviews all the nominations, and we see the names, we see read their nominations. And I feel like it can be a strategic tool when you're shaping your chapter, to really recognize those people who have, been top contributors, not financially, but in their time and their service. And I like Ruth's method where you kind of have both. You have the board deciding some that are point-based, so it's a little less biased. Hearing y'all, it feels like ours is biased as heck, but it helps us recognize those people who are really, stand out in the chapter, and we want to see them evolve. Eventually, we'd like to see those people, do more and be on the board and all that. Not that it's required, but it certainly just helps seal their dedication.
And I do know a couple chapters in recent years have also, similar to Chris, redacted information and asked other CEDs from other chapters or even other presidents or president-elects to kind of be those people of review. So again, if you are looking for that, again, we've got the exchange group, and I know throwing out something like that, I know sometimes people like to do that because then that gives them other ideas to bring back to their chapters or to see what's going on. So utilizing, again, both the CED network and then also this network of president and president-elects as well to kind of be those reviewers that are outside of that specific chapter network, but still within the industry realm of things. So that's something to consider too. I
was also going to really just say really quick to what Charlotte was saying. I work with another organization that does it that way, where it's like, it does seem like a popularity vote almost. And it's like almost the same people are winning every single year. And then it kind of discourages others. And I get it. Those people do put a lot of effort and stuff, but I feel like then other people that are still putting in effort and whatnot are overshadowed. And I just as a fly on the wall for that organization, I think I have felt that way, that it's like, wow, okay, so this person's just popular and they get it like a different award every single year, but it's just weird. And so anyways, I just thought I would at least put that opinion out there.
Thank you, Sarah. Anything else around awards that anyone wants to share or ask a question about? So we also received a question around sponsorships. I know some have already sent out 2024 sponsorship packets, but just trends that you're seeing. Are you raising prices? Are you adding anything new to your packages for the 2024 year? Go ahead, Craig. Oh,
I
you're on
have-
mute, Craig.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Was there somebody else?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say also, we did add some new things. We're adding some new things that it's going to be up to a vote that maybe some of you guys can use. We're getting some webinar sponsors. So that's a new thing, so that when we do the webinars, their logo will be in the back. That's one of the things that we added new now. And also we did these networking events so we could get a sponsor to sponsor instead of going every time we have a networking event, go and ask these sponsors. Well, we already have them already do the sponsorship for those networks. Those are the two things that we just added. And we're looking on adding several other categories in there, and also telling them, because of the increase in what's going on with inflation and everything and the budget cuts and all that, we're gonna give them an opportunity that if they lock in for like 2 years, the rate would stay the same for those 2 years. So that way we can work with them as well, because we had to increase, because obviously all the things are increasing, but their budgets are decreasing, so it's a little bit hard. But yes, we're adding other different things that might be beneficial. And we also lowered our amount to the management companies so that we can attract more managers and management companies. That's one of the things we are proposing now to get done.
Craig, go ahead.
Yeah, so there's a few things we do that are a little bit different. One, we started a few years ago during COVID, and we decided to keep it because it was so successful. We actually started giving people a 5% discount on the sponsorship level for the year if they were already a sponsor at any level. So even if somebody dropped down a level year over year, we gave them that 5% discount. And even with the 5% discount, we actually ended up getting more sponsorship overall dollars, because I think people appreciated that. We appreciated their continued support. So that's one thing we do. It's a little different. This year, we are upgrading our website, and we're changing a bunch of things on our website. So one of the things we're adding is some additional website exposure, which doesn't really cost us anything, but it's extra value that we're adding into the sponsorships. And the other thing we did this year that's a little different is on the lower sponsorship levels, we added kind of flex dollars for sponsorship. So on the two lowest levels, we added $500 in flex sponsorships, basically with the thought process of, as things come up through the year, and as we maybe add a new event or add an additional sponsorship, those people at the lower levels kind of already budgeted for the year, and they might not have that extra money to be able to come up with $250 or $500 for a new sponsorship. So the thinking being, if they're paying for it, budgeting for it at the beginning of the year, then when something comes up throughout the year, they can just allocate their dollars toward that. And it's something we have to track, but it's really not that many people to track it for. And the other thing I think we found is that, throughout the year, sponsorships, it's always the same people, larger dollar sponsorships at the golf outing are always the same companies, always the same people. So we were trying to give more opportunities for more companies to get exposure and to be involved. So creating more sponsorships, lower dollar sponsorships at some of the events that they can allocate money to and give them an opportunity to also get their name on something and be part of something, I think was something we were very aware of this year. So.
Great. Craig, that's great to hear that you guys are doing that. I know that was a part, we had our CED retreat in September, where the CEDs came into DC to have their conference, and that topic was brought up specifically about being able to make sure that those smaller companies or those mom and pop shops that don't have huge budgets can still be able to participate in making sure that you're having some of those lower level financial options available so that they can participate and you're not kind of blocking them out of, with the big dogs. So,
Yeah, and when
so
we,
that's great to hear.
it's so funny because when we first talked about changing that in the sponsorships, the immediate response was, okay, so the top levels are going to get, I said, no, the top levels don't need that money. Because if somebody comes to the bank or somebody comes to the, some of the larger sponsors and says, we need an extra $150 or an extra $200 for something, it's a lot easier for us to, okay, fine, we'll write the check for it than it would be for some of the other companies that are mom and pop companies and kind of budget for the year and that's all they have. So it was interesting that once it was brought up that way, people were like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense, instead of just automatically saying, give that benefit to the people who are paying the most money. So.
Great. Anyone else? Go ahead, Chris.
I did put a link to our 2024 approved one. Our lowest membership for annual is 4,000, and we left our diamond at 25,000, and we have people lined up for that, so we have limits. Because construction companies, they just need one job, and they make a couple 100,000 profit. So we have them stacked pretty deep on that, but we left it the same. But if they're going up, upgrading one level from last year, they get a 10% discount. And that's one of our CED and our president and executive committee. We're always trying to get more vendors because we have a good manager level. So
the other trend that I've heard a little bit around sponsorship as well is you have your annual partners or the generic partners that in order to participate in specialty items, like let's say it's a specialty networking event that you would want to sponsor, you need to be one of those annual partners. Again, kind of making sure that you've got this group who is wanting to participate at those levels and offering them some specialty items that only that group can then participate in. But with that being said, making sure that there's that availability for whoever wants to be those levels. So, it's not only the 5 people that are your annual partners and you only have 5 spots available, that, there's kind of that unlimited to be one of those annual partners, but then offering some specialty options for just that group as well. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. Does anyone else have anything you would like to bring to the group? See lots of just looking at the screens.
Well,
Go
I have
ahead,
a
Tom.
question. Kelly.
Yeah, go right ahead.
If there's any medium chapter members here who have a part-time assistant to the ED, can you please raise your hand or tell me how you do it? I guess that's Craig, yeah.
Well, we're probably a little larger, but I can just tell you structurally how it works for us. So Scott, who is our ED, is fairly new. He's been with us just over a year now. And his role has changed somewhat from what the last ED was doing. So we do have an assistant that works with him, and her role is kind of expanding. And a lot of it has to do with being at events, working the membership, working sponsorships, with all the events we're doing, registration and being the office representative there is kind of important. The other thing that person does that Scott previously did when he was in that role was go out and present at, there are all these other industry groups that are out there doing lunches and doing other things. Most of them gave us an opportunity as CAI to come out and speak to their members, because most of those people are already members themselves, and they support the industry and support CAI. So going out and telling the CAI story to those other events and trying to generate interest and knowledge about the organization, what we do and how we do it, I think was also a very important part of that role. So.
Can I ask a question on that, Craig? So what then did Scott, like what roles did change for Scott when you're adding in an admin? I really like this question. So thanks, Tom, because I think it's one of the things one of our chapters I think could use is like this admin support. But I look at more of an admin as being not the face and trying to get our ED more with that face, not the assistant. So can you try to explain maybe what the other side then changed? Because a lot of this is more face driven.
Yeah, it's, it is, I'm sure it's different for each chapter and the way those roles are kind of defined, but basically what we found was, the executive director is working with the board and is working with the individual committees and making sure that the mission of the chapter is being met. And there is obviously some PR to be done with sponsors and talking to people about sponsorship levels and things like that, but there's so much kind of daily administration, going and promoting CAI at an event, doing registration at a nighttime networking event, being at the monthly breakfast and setting up the CAI information table at the monthly breakfast. There's a lot more that person does that isn't quite as, it's not as mission driven, I guess is probably the best way to put it. It's more structural things that need to be done. But the other side of that is that the last EED or CED used to do all of the accounting, used to do all of the billing, and we're kind of automating that through our website. And we decided at a certain point to hire an outside accounting firm to do our monthly accounting. So that taken off of the CED gives the CED more time to do more of those relationship things. So we're kind of, we used to have two. We used to have the CED, the membership person, which Scott used to be, and he moved into the ED role. And then we also had an office assistant that answered the phones and signed people up for events or helped on the website, getting somebody's password reset, that kind of thing. And now we just have two. And we're kind of in the point where we don't know whether we need that third person and what that third person would be. But it's a lot of logistics and some of it may be committee, representing the office at a committee meeting and making sure that the committees are staying on track and they're following their charter and they're getting things done versus just kind of sitting around and going off on different tangents and not really doing what their charter says they should be doing. So it's like herding a bunch of cats. You guys know that.
Yeah, so we've got in my mind, we're kind of unique because we have 3 meetings over the course of 3 weeks and they're 100 miles apart, and the CED's got to plan each one of them and go to each one of them and go out and get new members and go out and meet new business, and she's overwhelmed, and I can see that, and our budget really doesn't support another person, but we kind of need one. And I'm just trying to get my hands around a neat way to get one in there just for the administrative stuff, the phone calls and the mailings and the watching the website. So, and it's a tough juggle, but I appreciate it, Craig.
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
One idea could be to have a committee, either specific committee, so you could have some maybe business partners or whatnot that really volunteer. We also push off like the membership committee. There's a lot of things that we push off to them that they have to do specific. So like they have to set up and they, at certain events, but maybe you could figure out to where for an interim, because if there's, it is hard to put into the budget and whatnot and find the right person and all of that, is that maybe you could band together and have a committee join so that it can just help relieve the CED and or support the CED. So.
A couple of chapters have also looked at one-off or specialty hiring. So for example, if a trade show, for example, they might hire an event planner to come in to work that, so that the CED isn't at the registration desk all day, and they can go around and make sure that they're interacting, and they've got a specialist that understands how to man an event, right? Again, or the one-off marketing person that, again, they're charging you by the work, not, constant hours. And there's a lot, of course, I can't think of the places now. I know there's one called like Fiverr and things, and I can collect that and we can get that out to you all. But different places that if it's one-off projects, so that it's not being bogged down on your staff. And I think it's very unique for our small and mid chapters that as you're seeing growth specifically, more pressure is being put on that CED, but financially you're not at that level to add another staff yet. And so kind of figuring out some of those logistics for that. I think it's very chapter specific, but knowing, hey, where do we have these gaps and how do we fill them? Is it through volunteer roles? Is it a one-off thing that we can do a contract, that we can take the accounting off the plate and use an outside accountant, and we can afford that bill versus adding a full or part-time employee that also then needs to be fully managed at that point. So just a couple of those outside the box options as well. Anyone else want to mention anything else around staffing, or if you've been in that unique situation where you've kind of moved up in growth and needed to add additional staffing, how you got there?
Well,
go ahead, Chris.
I can say we're in that same dilemma right now. Our CED had an 8-hour, he was there 10 hours yesterday and he had to drive 100 miles today because now we're doing outstate all over Minnesota. And I did the last one, but it's not sustainable for volunteers because they confuse me with the face of CAI when we want our CED to do that. But we're in that same position and we're looking at our budget right now and trying to figure out solutions. So it would be great if there was like a pool of national remote workers that knew CAI that could do the accounting, the event plan. I mean, that would be an optimal world, but it would be nice if we could just call somebody up and say, hey, can we have you do this? But it's tough finding qualified people locally too.
So it sounds like CAI, they could do like this virtual assistant pool. And it's really, that's kind of what I was thinking of, like, how do I get the more admin support for our CED, so that that person can then be more of that face and more of pushing the mission and all of that. But yeah, I don't know. Having a pool of where maybe this virtual assistant is part-time here and part-time there, and then they're full-time. And then that really actually can help if they're working on like 4 or 5 different chapters, but then can make that up. That would be super helpful.
All right. Thank you for that. I'll bring that back. I can't make any promises with that piece. Anything else? We've got a couple minutes left. Anything else anyone would like to bring to the group? All right. Thank you for a great discussion today, everyone. Great questions to bring to the group. We have another one coming up in November, so I hope that you all can make that one as well. Again, in the meantime, if you need anything, please let us know here, and we can get that out to you. Also, as that reminder, we've got the exchange group. So if you do think of any other questions between now and our next call, please feel free to use that exchange group. It's your presidents and president-elects are all a part of that. And as you're doing elections in November, we normally open up our tracking to collect the 2024 president-elects. So we will be sending that out to both this group and the CEDs that as those elections become finalized and you know who your president-elect is, please make sure that we're getting that communication so that we can go ahead and get them everything they need in 2024 to get ready for their presidency in 2025. Can't believe we're saying 2025 already, by the way. All right, well, everyone, I hope you have a great October and we'll speak soon. Thank you.